I'll get started now. Thank you again for joining me. I really am honored when people take the time out of their day to listen to what I have to say. And yeah, so here's what we're going to cover today. Number one, we're going to talk about me. That's going to be very, very short, I promise. But who am I? Why am I qualified to give you a talk on franchising? That franchise guy, I gave myself that name. Nobody gave it to me. So I want to talk a little bit about what qualifies me to be the guy. Then we're going to talk about the economy. And I think it's a real positive, but I'm going to give you my insights on that. We will talk about the trends and the state of franchising, for the next, we'll call it the foreseeable future. I'm not even going to say that's 2025, but going forward the next few years. We'll talk about hot franchises, and you're going to get my very direct and transparent thoughts on hot. And then franchise operating models, which I think is even more important. And then we'll wrap up with, what do I do to help people discover and explore franchising? How does that work? And how would you get started if you wanted to? So I come from the school of, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And that's kind of how this is going to work today. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to me. And if you're just coming in to join us, by all means, I just got started on time in the respect for time. We're going to do this for 20, 30 minutes tops and wrap this up. So I wanted to get started for those who were here on time. You haven't really missed anything yet, though, other than my awesome introduction. So who am I? Who is the franchise guy, and what qualifies me to be the one up here talking? Well, so I've been in franchising since 2007, 2006, really. And even if you go back to college, I did a year of franchising there. So I've got a lot of experience operating 3 different franchise models. And I'm going to talk directly about what does that mean here in a minute. I also have 8+ years now, coming onto my 9th year of being a franchise consultant, meaning that I have helped, thousands of people look at franchising. I've helped hundreds get into their own franchise over the last, 8+ years since the middle of 2016. Most important takeaway, though, I hope you guys all get is I'm talking to you today, and yes, that's you one-on-one. I know there might be 100 people, there might be 1,000 who eventually watch the recording, but I'm talking to you who's listening, and I am committed to you. If you want to explore what's next for you, that's what I'm here to do. Obviously, I'm looking at it through a franchise lens, but my goal with everybody that I work with is to commit to you. I'm going to help you find that next best thing. I may end up telling you you're a terrible fit for starting a business or terrible fit for franchising. And that's just because I don't want to see you lose your investment if it's not going to, be the right thing for you. You may discover through your journey that you're better suited to starting your own business outside of franchising. You may decide through your journey that you're better suited to find another job or just stay at what you're doing and be happy with that. My role is to help you get to that place. And if it involves franchising, what is the right franchise? And we'll talk a lot more about how I do that. All right. My franchise story, if you throw out the painting business I was in many, many years ago in college, which is part of my story, and someday we'll talk more about that, but it was just a year I was still in college. This is really where I made the career break from mortgage banking. My wife was a mortgage banker as well, to owning our own business. That is Bounce You, not You Bounce, commonly mispronounced, but the brand was children's entertainment, birthday parties based around inflatables in an indoor fun center. It resonated with us. As you can see, Austin, Kirsten, and Nicholas there, my 3 kids, our 3 kids. We had triplets at the time. We had been to birthday parties at these types of places when we lived in California. And when we got to Tulsa, it resonated with us. Let's just say that. And it's been a very good business. We still own it 17 years later. And so this is where we started. Within the Bounce You brand, this was 2007. We had a couple hiccups. I don't know if you remember a little thing called the financial crisis, um, but we survived it and came out thriving, to be honest, in 2009 and 10. We ended up opening one in Las Vegas. So not only, have I operated one, I've operated two, I've operated them in multiple states. I can speak to you about how does that work and or not work. There were certainly challenges with it. We sold that in early 2013. It was not a great fit for us and my wife and I, for me traveling to Vegas once a month on my own to run a business. So I'll leave it at that. She didn't like it. I didn't like it. And we were able to sell that location and get our investment out of that. So the Tulsa one obviously has been great. We've since gone on to, my franchise consulting. We now also own 3 men's hair salons. So multiple brands, multiple locations, multi-units, and having helped, hundreds of people, I feel like I'm pretty qualified to be that franchise guy. Um, how, and obviously I've been, in your shoes. I actually worked with a franchise consultant to find that Bounce You business years ago. How do I help you? I'm going to save that for the end. Just know that I'm your guide. I'm an executive recruiter paid by the franchises. So there's never any cost to you or anything like that. I've got tons of resources. I'm going to show you those at the end as well, and how to, set up a conversation. If you'd like, you can go right here at the calendar link, down in the lower right corner, do a photo of that QR code. It'll take you right to my calendar. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Now let's talk about why you're really here. So the economy, I don't think it's that complicated, right? I can tell you, if we go back to October, there were a lot of people I was working with who were like, let's just wait a few weeks before we make any decisions. And the first week in November, when we clearly had a more pro-business president-elect, somebody flipped a switch, and it's been nonstop really ever since then. So I think what you can count on going forward is less regulation, at least at the federal level, less taxes, much more pro-business climate, and all of those things without getting into a lot of boring data. It's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of optimism, and people are pretty excited about business opportunities for 2025 and beyond. Obviously, local governments and local restrictions, regulations could be a little bit different, and something we might want to talk about. But from a national economy perspective, the future is bright. One way you can always tell that, if you go back, I mentioned that financial crisis thing we had about 15 years ago. Money dried up. You couldn't get an SBA loan back in 2009 and 10. Banks weren't lending. There's a lot of liquidity in the economy right now. Banks have money to lend. They want to lend money, and so yeah, there's lots of funding opportunities out there, and actually not that complicated to get. You need a 680, 700 credit score in most cases, but if you don't have that, there's even other funding opportunities we can talk about for you. Artificial intelligence, tariffs. These are like the two big buzzwords really in the second half of 2024 and post-election with President Trump, is tariffs. AI has been happening for, I can't tell you how long. It just has become much more mainstream and apparent in the last couple of years with things like ChatGPT. So there's lots of ways AI is going to help franchises and help you as a potential franchise owner be more efficient, but it's not going to change your world in any way. It's not going to do anything that you need to focus on that as a decision point. I'm going to tell you the same thing with tariffs. President Trump is a very egotistical guy. His legacy is very important to him. The last thing he wants is to do something that's going to superheat inflation back up and or wreck the economy. That's not going to happen. What may happen is there may be industries that get affected. He's going to certainly use tariffs as a negotiating tool. But again, I don't see that that is going to help us or hurt us as small business owners, boots on the ground, doing business day to day. Um, it will continue to be a talking point. It's something you want to keep an eye on, but it's not something that you want to get too hung up on. Even though these are the two things that are probably the most common things in the news, let's say, in terms of trends. Small business optimism. This was really exciting, and I wanted to add this to my presentation. I actually threw this in kind of last minute because this just came up yesterday. Small business optimism at a 6-year high. And this is a survey that's done through the National Federation. I want to get this right. National Federation of Independent Business Owners. NFIB, most people know. I'm very familiar with that. I've been a member of NFIB myself. It's just National Federation of Independent Business Owners. That's a mouthful and it's hard to remember. So, but that is the organization. It's a nonprofit, collection of independent business owners, small business, is sometimes referred to. Their survey of optimism of small business owners is at a 6-year high going back to 2018. And if you see that trend line, it looks like it's doing nothing but going further up. So when you look at operating a small business or potentially the future, again, is quite bright there. All right, so part 2 of this subject line, if you will, or this topic, let's talk about franchising specific trends. The word semi-absentee, sometimes semi-passive, if you've done any look into franchising, you've heard that. Over the last 5 or 6 years, franchisors have, in my opinion, done a disservice to the industry by over-promising what that could be. And so there are certain businesses that truly can be operated semi-absentee, and there's some that really, no matter what kind of marketing promises they make you, it's not going to work. And so it's important that you don't make that mistake, and that, again, I'm going to shameless plug for me. I don't cost anything. You might as well talk to me. I'm going to help you avoid that mistake, because we're going to have real conversations around real businesses and what it looks like to run this business day to day. Semi-absentee or semi-passive, or even a word I like to use, semi-active, all basically mean the same thing. You're in the business 5 to 10 hours a week. You can keep your job, which is why they're so popular. You can keep building other businesses, which is why they're popular. And they're just not a lot of businesses that are really built for that model. So what is semi-absentee? That means you're paying the bills, you're setting the vision for the business, you are the leader, you're managing a manager, somebody else is operating the day-to-day. You are just the CEO and the visionary for the business, providing that lead. Often you're the direct liaison to corporate, but many of the models that are truly suited to semi-absentee have manager support built into their franchisee support. So that is hot for sure. It is growing, but it is also something that you need to look at very closely and make sure it marries with what you want to do or are capable of doing. Home-based is another one that has truly taken off in the last few years, and it's primarily service-based businesses that don't require brick and mortar retail presence or even an office. How do you do that? Well, if you're going to have a home-based business and it's going to be scalable, the franchise has to support that properly through things like a call center, and other training and support avenues that allow you to not have to run it out of an office. And there are some that you might start home-based and then grow into an office as it makes sense to do so. So I just touched on service brands a little bit, and I'll expand on that right now. What are service brands? Primarily, you're going to see them in what we'd call a B2C, business to consumer. Anything that you can think of around the house, whether it's home improvement or maintenance, there's a franchise for it. So kitchen remodeling, closet remodeling, flooring, painting, electrical, garage makeovers, any of that kind of stuff, even outdoor lighting, roofing, those kind of things that you might get excited about. Varied investment levels, some as little as 100,000 all in, some all the way up to over $1 million. If you've got a lot of heavy equipment, and we'll avoid those probably in most cases. You also will have some maintenance, like maid services. Tried and true maid franchises have been around since the 80s, and they're predictable, stable, and you just plug and play and execute their model. Great opportunities with things like maids, landscaping, more maintenance kind of businesses. Wellness and finding youth brands. So this has certainly been a trend. And I'm not talking fitness, because that's going to be the bottom one. I'm talking wellness. I'm talking finding youth brands. There's this, weight loss, think things like that. There's a lot of things that are expanding in those areas because the consumer's driving it. There's a big consumer demand for it. Anything around the senior services kind of space, lots of demand for those things, and the franchises are growing to it. Too many brands. What do I mean by that? It's exactly what it says. There are some spaces where there's just too many. So you'll see some, in terms of trends, talking about what's coming for 2025, you're going to see some consolidation where maybe 2 mosquito service companies will merge because you just don't need that many of them, and there's more coming online every day. And so there are certain industries where you're going to see some of that. There may be some that even in the fitness space is another one. I mentioned that kind of tongue in cheek a minute ago, but there frankly are too many, corner fitness places to survive in the long run, and so you'll see some mergers there, and probably some of them close, unfortunately, like frozen yogurt many years ago. Now let's talk about what's hot. Can I tell you, I hate that word. I know, apologize. I put hot in the subject line and all of the messaging going out. Come see what's hot. And that's just because it's the most common question I get is, what is hot? What's the hot franchise? So what I'm going to caution you about is that hot franchise. An example maybe that comes to mind is, let's say you were fortunate enough to pick out Orange Theory Fitness back in 2007 or 8 when they were just getting started. Well, at that time, there was probably 20 other brands that were also getting started, that were new emerging brands that are no longer even in business, or maybe they have a few locations. What if you've got one of those 20 instead of Orange Theory? So it takes a little bit of luck, being in the right place at the right time, and of course being a good operator to end up with a truly hot franchise. So I like to say, let's take a step back from that. Let's not focus on what's hot, because what's mostly, if it's hot, if it's like on all the magazines for being the hot franchise, it's probably going to be on the magazine next year for some sort of fraud or some sort of reason they closed. Undercapitalized is a big one. One of the tells is a slick sales process. So if you get involved with one of them and you just feel like these guys are promoting something that is a can't miss opportunity, territories are selling too fast, I got to get in, that is really something that's a red flag, and you need to take a strong look at that. Maybe call me, and if we're not already working together, and let's look at that together. I can tell you that the excitement is such, though, that even franchise insiders like me can get caught up in it. Now, I haven't, fortunately, because I'm a little bit more about stable and predictable, and less about trying to catch the wave of what's going to be hot this year. But I'll give you an example, one example, and then I'm gonna move on because we're already almost 20 minutes in. There was a brand that came out of the gate maybe a year and a half ago with tiny homes. 1,000 square foot, 1,200 square foot prefabricated homes, and this franchise was selling like wildfire. By this time last spring, you couldn't hardly find a territory available for it. By July, they were closed. The franchisor just disappeared, and it got pretty ugly, as you can imagine. So, and I do know of friends in the business who are consultants that actually bought into it themselves, and so it's not something that even the experts sometimes can get caught up in that. So just be careful if you think maybe it's too good to be true, or it seems like they've got that slick sales process. It may not be something you want to pursue. I prefer to think of a hot franchise as the right brand at the right time for you. And so we're going to talk a little bit now about what does the day-to-day look like for you? What is the future of the industry? And obviously those things are important. What business are they in? What kind of support do they give you? All those kind of things are hugely important and part of our process to evaluate them. But it starts with figuring out, what do they do every day, and how does that fit into my life as I see it? And, and then we, expand from there. So models to consider. Now we're going to talk about some specifics. Semi-passive. We talked a little bit about that a minute ago in terms of trends. And so I want to dive into this just a little bit more. Semi-passive, semi-absentee. I mentioned the word semi-active. I kind of like that better. Because you're putting money into this, you're putting some time into it, you expect a return, and it's not mailbox money. This isn't even as simple as real estate, and if you've owned Airbnbs or rental homes, those can be problematic too. You have to pay attention, you have to lead the team, and you have to be the CEO of your business. If you're not prepared to do that, then let's not go down this path, because you're gonna lose your investment. But if you are prepared to do that, but you really want to keep your job, or you have another business and you want to invest in other franchises, semi-passive is the way to go. And so this is something where you're going to do 5 to 10 hours a week, not get involved in the daily operation at all. You are going to manage that manager. So in that 5 to 10 hours a week, you're doing weekly meetings, you're responding to emergencies. I'm getting text messages right now about a water heater that's leaking at one of our hair salons. That's real life. That's business. My manager's handling it, but I'm gonna have to get involved when we're all done here. So it's the kind of thing that you just need to be prepared for. You're gonna pay the bills. You're gonna have maybe get involved in marketing, that kind of stuff, depending on the needs of the business and how skilled your manager is. What are some examples? And I'm going to pause here for a second and go back just to say, I'm showing you some brand names here, and I'm going to caution you to be careful clicking on stuff on the website and filling out forms on the website. You fill out a form on the website, you're going to get 10 phone calls within about an hour. If you want information, obviously I would love to help you with it, being the source of information here that brought this to you. I would certainly appreciate you come back to me, say, hey, John, I'm interested in this franchise brand. Can you get me some information on it? I will get it to you in a way that is respectful of your time, and so that you will not be pounded with 10 different people calling you or emailing you trying to sell you on something. So that being said, here are the brand names that are some examples. Sharky's Cuts for Kids, a very good friend of mine named Scott Sharkey founded this brand many years ago. They've got over, I don't know where they are now, 100 locations, fully nationwide. He is just far and away the leader in the children's hair salon space. The systems, the formulas, the support, everything is locked in to be able to operate this in that 5 hours a week kind of operation. We have hair salons in a different space. I got involved with them before I know Scott, but it's a similar model. Our hair salons are for men, and the idea that I'm not licensed, I don't know how to cut hair, but we're plugging in managers and stylists and barbers who are. Scott's doing the same thing there with Sharky's Cuts for Kids in a kids base. You're looking at a total investment probably somewhere in the 275, 300,000 range. That number is not a sales pitch marketing number. When I talk about total investments, it's everything that you're going to need if you are working with the SBA. It's your total capitalization. It's going to cover your franchise fees. It's going to cover your build out, your construction costs, any equipment that you're going to need. It's going to cover your marketing budget for the first for the grand opening and the first 6 months. Cover things like insurance. It'll cover salaries and everything. Basically, it's designed to get you to your profitability place. Skin Experts by Brentwood. This one's really interesting. This was kind of the talk of a recent conference I was at in October, and it's gotten on my radar. It is very what we call emerging. It's very new, and so that does create its own research issues, things that you're going to want to, that I coach you through as we go through. What are you looking at? Because this is a newer brand. You've got to be willing to buy into that. But it's at the forefront of this wellness opportunity. It's at the forefront of, the fountain of youth kind of brands that people are looking for and are going to be as we project over the next couple of years. They're into all things, not just Botox, which, most people would think Skin Experts probably are, but ultra-red light therapy, all of these kinds of things that they get into cosmetically, with topically, with like lotions and whatnot, and just really like what they're doing and how they've presented themselves. Well capitalized, which is important for a new emerging brand, and founded by two sets of industry experts. So you've got franchising people who are experts at franchising who are involved, and you have the cosmetic skin experts, the people with history in the spa business, together building this brand. Their goal is to be the Starbucks of skincare nationwide, and I think they're going to get there. So this is one on the newer end of things. If you're interested, hit me up for that and let's talk about it. Much bigger investment than Sharky's, probably double. You're probably in that $500,000-600,000 range. Wave Max is laundromats. Excellent brand, bigger investment, a lot of equipment. You've got commercial grade washers and dryers. The build out's expensive. Your all in investment with that's going to probably be $1 million in that range. And so you need to be prepared for that. But very hands off, one employee. You're not going to be there often. Again, just 5 hours a week, I'm sure, is plenty with that business. All right, let's talk about the executive model. John, what is an executive model? So this means a few things to different people, but I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can pull this up here. The title, it's not going to let me, this thing. The title of my book, Be the CEO of Your Life. That's what the executive model means. Be the CEO. That means you decide when you're there, how much you're there, and, you drive the business. It does not mean you're there day to day running it. So I believe, and I'm going to pause right here for a second before I go into these examples. Every business that's worth getting into should be capable of becoming an executive model. Our Bounce You business that I showed you how we got started, that was is a full-time owner operator model. I work at less than 10 hours a week because I have a good team running it for me. That's the executive model. Now, that didn't happen overnight. It took about 3 years. So what kinds of businesses can you start that way? And so I'm going to tell you, this is taking that semi-absentee and expanding it a little bit, meaning, all right, now you probably got to put 20 hours a week into it. Can you keep your job and do the executive model on startup? Maybe. It depends on how much flexibility you really have in your job. It depends. Maybe you have a spouse that can contribute some time. Those kind of things might make an opportunity. So examples here, lime painting. I am just floored with what Nick Lopez and his team in Denver have done with lime painting. Just the absolute best of the best when it comes to caring about their franchise owners and creating a scalable business that you can plug into. They will go above and beyond to support you and whatever that, whatever you need to be successful. And I should say it's more than that. It's lime. It should be lime painting, coatings, and more, because they do get into their high-end residential primarily. They do get into commercial in year 2, but it focuses on that high-end market. Average ticket I don't want to get into that because you start getting into financial claims, and so I have to be careful with that. But let's just say they're 5 and 10 multiples of what their competition is, where everybody else is focusing on any job they can get. They're focusing exclusively on high-end jobs. It's also a contractor model. You have no employees. You really are creating a relationship. So in an executive model from day one, you will have an employee. You're going to have to hire a general manager or operations manager. So you need to build that into, maybe a $200,000 startup. If you go for an executive model, maybe it's 250 because you got to pay that person, that manager. If you're working at full time, you don't need that. So, physical therapy and balance centers, Medi weight loss. Again, these are a couple that fit into that wellness category that has just really taken off in the last few years, and we see that continuing. Um, both of these are probably a 350 kind of startup. Uh, Physical therapy and balance centers, I love what they're doing. I've talked to franchisees there that um, are making, let's just say, a very sufficient return on their investment. And so I really like what they're doing. And again, you're managing a clinical director, so you are the business side. The clinical director is managing the day to day. So very easy to do in this 10 to 20 hour a week kind of time frame. Medi weight loss would be operated the same thing. It's just instead of focusing on physical therapy, your focus is on guiding people through weight loss, beyond over the counter stuff. You're getting involved in medical driven solutions that are overseen by a clinical director. Pestmaster Services, this one is really unique and maybe an under the radar kind of business. Very low end. You get started with this for low hundreds, but with a general manager probably 150. If you're going to do this executive model out of the gate, where you hire somebody else to be the day to day. It's pest control, so it's not real sexy or real complicated. It's pretty straightforward. Another industry that's been around for, in franchising since the 80s, probably. What their unique spin on it is their experience with helping franchise owners secure government contracts for pest control. So yes, you are going to have residential customers, and there's a marketing plan for that. Yes, you're going to have commercial customers. There's a marketing plan for that. They are going to help you. They don't provide them. They don't already have them. They're going to help you look at your market. What kind of government entities are there or agencies are there that you could secure contracts to service them? Building kids daycare, preschools, phenomenal brand, bigger investment. Now you're getting upwards of 500 to $1 million. A lot of that depends on the size. So probably can be done under 500 or 600,000. If you want a bigger footprint to accommodate more kids, you could be upwards of $1 million. The returns are there. It all just depends on what you're wanting to invest. But huge need, awesome people, creating there's a curriculum around performing arts that helps the kids learn experientially, not just having them come to preschool and read a book. I mean, they do theatrical performances, and they even get into second languages and things like that. Very, very cool concept if that's in your wheelhouse. The traditional full-time model. First, pros and cons. As I talked about a minute ago, and so I won't harp on this, it should be something that can grow to an executive model. That's the reason most people tell me they want to be in business, is control of their time. They don't want to be buying a job for a 60-hour work week. I'm going to tell you, it might be for a few months. You might put 50, 60 hours a week into it. But once you get that foundation set, I want you to, be the CEO of your business, be the CEO of your life, and elevate and manage that team. The key here is your ramp up. So we want to look at how quickly does it take to get profitable? How quickly does it take to make money? What kind of money, once you are profitable? And how do you bridge that gap with your personal bills? Do we finance that into an SBA loan so that the business is paying you, even though it's not profitable, it's paying you as the manager to run the business? That's a strategy. Some people come into this with enough personal savings to to cover them. But the ramp up period, how long it is and how you're going to cover it, is hugely important to not just thriving, or I should say, not just surviving, but setting yourself up to thrive in this business. Some example, oh yeah, of course, ramp up. I'm going to double emphasize ramp up time frame. We will definitely talk about what does that look like, because I don't want you to think, oh, I can't leave my job and go do this because I have, no backup. We can build that into the business plan. And the key there is plan. Here's some examples. Sign World at the top, interestingly enough, is actually not a franchise. These are all examples of businesses, though, that I know people who have scaled to, 7-figure businesses, and it's very achievable, and then some. And but they do typically require more of a full-time effort your first, year or two, sometimes longer. So Sign World, there's a great interview on my YouTube if you're interested, of a Sign World owner who built his business up to $2 million in 3 years and sold it. I mean, he wasn't an owner that long. At Work Group, I have a longtime friend in Sacramento who is one of their top. In fact, she and her husband were franchisee of the year last year, I believe. And I know what those numbers look like, and that's a substantial return. Oh, by the way, Sign World startup, only about 260, 275 all in. They even have a lower cost home-based model because they do a lot of wholesaling in terms of the manufacturing process of signs. The At Work Group is staffing and recruiting. Your all-in investment there is probably 150, maybe 200,000. That's mostly working capital as you're building relationships with the businesses that you serve. You've got to float the employees that are getting paid. Pertec USA is, I almost guarantee you, none of you have heard of this one, and you're probably Googling it right now. They are in a very niche business. This is a business to business, typically, kind of operation. And they are in hydraulics, repair hoses that go along with hydraulics. Not something I was even well aware of a year ago, but is a huge need, a big business opportunity. And the total industry for that niche is significant, and there is no competition, certainly not franchise-wise, within that space. So Pertec USA is a really, really interesting opportunity. If you start without a workshop warehouse, you're probably under 300. If you do invest in that, so that you can do, because a lot of the work is done on your customer's site, doing it at their place. If you do have your own warehouse to be able to bring work and repairs in-house, you probably double that. Probably 550 is your total investment. Home well care services. This is right in that senior sector and the wellness sector that I talked about. They provide caregivers going into people's homes so that they can basically stay at home, age in place. That's the term that we use. Without going into an assisted living facility. Statistically, they live longer. There's certainly a higher quality of life. How do they do it? Whether they're living at home or maybe living with the kids. If 85-year-old mom is living with their kids, maybe the kids have their own jobs, their own kids, their own careers, and they need help. Well, you bring caregivers in on an hourly paid basis to help. This business, really started the industry, I'd say, in the 90s. Ton of competition right now, but if you plug into the right brands, these are, with Homewell and some of the competitors in the space that I work with, there's examples of not just 7 but 8-figure franchise owners in that space. So very scalable, something that you might want to look at. The last one, if you really like some design aspect, and there's only limited markets around the country where this is still available, but they do offer a very big territory. You're probably at a 450,000 total investment for Closet Factory. This is custom closet, primarily remodeling, but some some going in with builders and brand new. Excuse me. But they are the only ones that are doing these custom work. The other half a dozen closet franchises, it's all modular, it's all prefabricated, built somewhere else, shipped to the customer, and the franchisee installs it. So those are a lot lower investment, a lot lower end homes typically. Closet Factory is typically dealing with the higher end. And again, another one that I've been directly involved with people well over 7 figures in sales, and in some cases, net revenues as well. So it's certainly a scalable business. Many of their franchise owners have been with them for 20 or 30 years. They just don't leave. They hand it down to kids and things like that. So if you can find it, um, especially if we can find a resale, they do have several of those going on throughout the year as the older franchise owners are finally wanting to retire. That's a great opportunity for a full-time business. Last one, part-time solopreneur. This is one that, generally speaking, you're talking about very basic. It's not generally super scalable because it's just you. One example even would be like me being a franchise consultant. That's me. Um, Property Management Inc. is unique because you can start part-time and build that into full-time. Again, there's another video interview I did on my YouTube channel with a guy I worked with in Kansas City who started part-time for a couple years, kept his job, built this business up, moved into an office. And when I interviewed him last summer, he had just moved into his second office because he now has 2 or 3 people working for him and they needed a bigger space. So uh, definitely an opportunity there from that you can start full part-time and take it full-time. Other things, and I pulled Crestcom out, which is a management and leadership brand. They would prefer, as with, and I'll throw several in here, right? Action Coach, Focal Point is another one if you like the coaching industry. There's some that you get into, but basically it's a consulting business where it's you as the franchise, and if you work, you make money. If you don't work, you don't. So it can be part-time, you're just not making money. So it's not my ideal situation for most people, but it is there, and I wanted to include it. The last one, vending, can definitely be part-time. Maybe you consider it semi-absentee. I think of it more as part-time because it's you're not even managing somebody. You're just restocking machines once a week or paying a college student to do that. All right. I've gone way over on time. I know I said 20 or 30 minutes. I think we're at 40, so I'm going to wrap this up. My process, number one, I'm committed to you. I think I talked about it in the beginning. If you missed it, my commitment is to help you find your next best thing. Is it franchising? Is it another job? Is it keep your job? Is it start a business outside of franchising? We're going to discover that together. That's my commitment to you. As long as you want my help and are engaged in our process, I'm going to be there supporting you and helping you 100%. There's no cost. I'm an executive recruiter, kind of model. So I do get paid by the franchisors, full disclosure. But again, looking at number one, my commitment is to you to help you, not regardless of who pays me. And you know what? I'm going to spend 30 more seconds on that. That's really important to me. This is a relationship business, and I have had people come back to me 2 and 3 years after the fact of deciding, maybe it wasn't, I don't want to do this. Well, it wasn't that they weren't ready for or weren't capable of a franchise ownership. They weren't ready. The time wasn't right. But because I respected that relationship and built that relationship with them and helped them, they came back to me several years later. I have also had multiple people refer me to people who have bought a franchise when that original person didn't, because of my commitment to them. All right, so no cost ever. Basically, we're going to do an initial consultation. We're going to get acquainted. I've got to learn. I've got to walk in your shoes. I've got to learn what your hot buttons are, what your goals are, and really create a profile out of that. So I have some tools I use. The profile assessment there is one of them, and basically it's just a lot of us talking and doing a consultation to understand you. Education, I'm big on that. I have tons of resources we're going to talk about in a minute. And then we take that and get back together, and in person, I'll go through the matching process. Once you identify a few that you are really excited about, I become your tour guide, if you will, your psychologist, your hand holder, however you want to call it. I coach you through that process, making sure you're asking all the right questions. And then, yes, of course, there's lots of testimonials on my LinkedIn page. Um, let's see here. Oh, there we go. So, uh, resources to wrap this up. Again, we're at the end here, about a minute. Message me if you'd like a copy of my book. You can get it in a variety of places. It is available on Amazon if you like paperback for $6, or Kindle. It's there too. I'm happy to send you a PDF, no cost. Just message me on LinkedIn, or you can reach me on john@thatfranchiseguy.com. You can tons of resources on my website, thatfranchiseguy.com. If you go here, franchising 101, you'll see lots of resources. And then in terms of how you get started, um, I prefer honestly to schedule a call, but if you'd like to get started online, there's maybe 10 minutes of your time. You click on here, there's 5 questions that I need some answers to. And then you take that short personality assessment, and then we can get started introducing you to franchises that way. More resources on my YouTube page. Here it is, at That Franchise Guy John. If you go to at That Franchise Guy on YouTube, you're going to get some NFL football guy, the franchise. So I'm That Franchise Guy John on YouTube, and lots of resources here where you'll see I've interviewed franchisees and franchisors. Lastly, again, we start with a consultation, getting acquainted. You can hit my calendar link with the QR code down at the bottom. Or if you want, email me, message me on LinkedIn, or if you're old-fashioned, just give me a call. It rings. You're not going to see this, but here's my phone, rings right here at my desk, and I'd love to talk to you. So I went way over. I apologize for that. Hopefully it's some great information. I thank you for joining me or watching this after the fact. I truly am honored that you invested some time to do so. And I hope that I get a chance to meet you and talk to you soon. Have a great day, a great week, and Happy New Year and an awesome 2025.